Ranking the rebuilds, we talked about in the first hour at the All-Star break, the Phillies have exceeded a lot of expectations, 42-48 after winning just 29 games at this point last year. That would say that they are moving in the right direction. But which of the Phillies sports teams is doing it the best? Columnist Jack McCaffrey over at the Delco Times maps that out for you. This is a tough one. I mean, the Sixers doing what they did, have a lot of young talent. The Flyers have been patient. The Eagles went out and got a quarterback. And the Phillies, of course, two trades have really changed some things for that organization. And Jack's got a wild card team in there as well. We'll bring Jack McCaffrey into the conversation here on the Bash 97.3 ESPN. How are you, sir? How you been?
Hi, Mike. Great, thanks.
You got it. So, hey, this time last year, if we were having this conversation, it'd be a lot of gloom and doom. It didn't look like anybody was moving in the right direction. How one calendar year has changed a lot of things.
So many teams are rebuilding in Philadelphia, which is rare. It's to have 4 of the 5 teams rebuilding at the same time. The Eagles, not so much rebuilding, but you saw what they did. They went out of their way to go ahead and move up and get the number 2 pick in the draft, so they're at least maybe heading in that direction. There's still think that they have a chance to make the playoffs where they are, but the Flyers, the Phillies, the Sixers, and the Union all kind of trying to build something, and it's really been fun to watch. A lot of good young players all developing at the same time.
We'll start with the Phillies because they're at the All-Star break and kind of sparked this conversation. Has this been done faster than maybe you anticipated? And what about what they're doing should fans like?
Well, you have to love what they've put on the field as far as the young players that they have right now. You look at that curveball that Eichhoff has. You look at that power that Franco has. You look at the way Herrera has become a more complete hitter. These are all young players. You look at a guy like Eflin. Nola has had a tough go of it the last couple of weeks, but you saw early on that he's going to be a special pitcher in that league. So they've been able to do it with some young players at the big league level. Then when you look at what they've got cooking in the minor leagues, they're deep in catching. They've got J.P. Crawford, who's some people rank as the number 1 prospect in all of minor league baseball. Jake Thompson's throwing the ball hard. So they've got talent in the pipeline, and they've got good, young, interesting talent performing at the big league level already. And that's not going to necessarily translate to a championship, but it puts them in that direction.
Yeah, and they made those 2 trades, and where Jack, it's pretty unprecedented the amount of talent they got back in 2 deals that are this close to being ready to help out on the big league level. You don't see that too much.
They gave up a lot. I mean, you talk about their trade to Cole Hamels directly after pitching a no-hitter. When does that happen? And the Texas Rangers have been, evidently they're pretty happy with what they got. They're winning, and Hamels is pitching well. So if it's a trade that helps both teams, that's fine. But when you talk about one deal where you get back Eichhoff and see what kind of special talent he's going to be, and you got Nick Williams and Alfaro and Jake Thompson, and you're looking at a real haul of good young talent for Cole Hamels. Around this time last year, that's what we were saying. Okay, fine. You want to trade Cole Hamels, go ahead and do it. But you better not get hoodwinked. You better not get robbed. They didn't get robbed. They got a nice group of players back in return. And they were able to move Ken Giles and got Velasquez back. Now, Velasquez has had a history of injury. He even had another injury this year. He's one of the few players I've ever heard in my career that will admit to being injury-prone. But, boy, when he's on the top of his game, he's got a chance to be a great pitcher, too. So, yeah, Amaro last year, Quintac in the offseason. They've done a nice job of replenishing that farm system, and they've done so quickly, too.
Yeah, Jack, it's interesting you brought up Amaro because, for years, it's like Ed Wade. When he was here, everybody thought he was a boob and wanted him out. And then when you look back at that 08 team, it was, wow, Wade should get some credit for not trading these guys. And then, of course, everybody wanted Amaro out because he couldn't get out of his own way. And now we're looking back. How much credit does Ruben get for where they are right now?
He gets credit for the Call Hamels trade. He gets credit for that. He was also here with the Jimmy Rollins trade, so they got Eflin for Rollins. So he once he was given the okay to go ahead and start rebuilding that thing, then he was able to get some decent players back in return. And prior to that, it was more or less, let's see if we can't win with Utley and Rollins and Howard and these guys, maybe plug in a Marlon Byrd, try to steal something. Once they realized that wasn't going to happen, that those guys were just going to get older and not any better, he was given the okay to make some trades. He was able to get some pretty decent talent back in return.
Yeah, you mentioned that this team was given, where once he was given the okay, is that something that you think was kind of left out of the Amaro era, that maybe he wasn't allowed to do some things that he wanted to do? Could this have started earlier had he had his way?
I think what he wanted to do, I mean, yeah, maybe allowed wasn't the right word. Dave Montgomery, for one, encouraged the Phillies to continue to try to present those very popular players from the 2007 to 2011 run. He was convinced that people not only wanted to see winning baseball, but they wanted to see Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins and Chooch and these guys, Call Hamels. He believed that people wanted to see those particular players play winning baseball. It was a worthwhile gamble, I guess. And they got old quickly. Ryan Howard tore his Achilles in his knee. Who could have predicted that? Hamels was still at the peak of his game when they let him go. So there was some rationale behind what they were doing. But once they realized it wasn't going to work out, then that's when they had to go ahead and start to make some changes, and they did. Well, you look back and you wonder what the heck was the big rush to move Hunter Pence. There were some things that make you scratch your head about the things that Amaro did, but we've just limited to the Call Hamels trade and maybe the Jimmy Rollins trade. If you look at the way Eflin's pitching, it makes you think that he did some decent things on his way out the door.
Jack McCaffrey's with us. DelcoTimes.com is where you can check this article out about the rebuilds. How about the Flyers? Because they're doing it in a way, Jack, that would surprise a lot of Flyers fans around the Delaware Valley, is that they did it with patience, something they didn't have for basically their entire existence.
Give them credit for patience, and then they were patient and also made the playoffs. So maybe when I wrote that column today, maybe I should have thought about that too, because they're patient and they made the playoffs. They've got some good young talent. Gostis Fair's going to be a superstar. You can see that coming a mile away. I was at the rookie camp today in Voorhees, and they're really every rookie camp looks good. But when you go in the locker room and you just walk around the dressing room and you just listen, you open your ears up, more than once you keep hearing more talent than we've ever had, more players than we've had. Guys that have been here 2 or 3 years, to a man, are saying it's different now than it was 2 or 3 years ago, much deeper at every position. They're deep in goaltending. They're deep in talking about young goaltending. They're deep in young defensemen. They're deep in young forwards. And like I said earlier with the Phillies, who knows a lot of times with young players and prospects and things, whether it'll necessarily translate to a championship, but the atmosphere around the rookie camp here with the Flyers is much different than it's been in the last 2 or 3 years.
And a lot, we look back at the Phillies and we talk about how much the front office, the ownership group may have hindered them. How about Hextall and the role that he has played in bringing patience to this organization?
Very, very patient, and it could pay off. The trick is going to be to get these guys ready and contributing before Giroux, Voracek, Simmons, those guys get too old. And if you're a Flyers fan, the good news is, even though those guys seem like they've been around 2 centuries, they're not 30 yet. They're 27 to 30-year-old guys that still have really 5, 6 potentially very good years in them. So if Hextall can bring along these young defensemen at a time when maybe some of those guys are still viable, big-time all-star candidates, then that might be the combination in the next 3 or 4 years maybe even sooner, they can make a real serious Stanley Cup run.
And it sounds as if, Jack, that Hextall can be trusted, that he's not going to make one of those knee-jerk trades just to try to be a playoff team at some point. He showed that last year. We had him on the other day, and he doesn't sound like, he's being influenced at all by what he sees in these prospect camps. And we asked, hey, does Goss's Bear success make you more warmed up to some of these younger? Nope, not at all. Like, he doesn't seem like he's budging on that.
Well, you saw the way he was as a player. Who would have expected otherwise? Very, very stubborn player, a very stubborn general manager, and he's being successful so far. He got to the playoffs last year, and I wouldn't be surprised to get to the playoffs again this year. And developing young talent, what's not to like? It's maybe a little slower than Flyers fans are used to, but they're heading in the right direction.
And then, of course, there's the Sixers, and we all know about what they've done over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Here we are now. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
That's the big question. Now, I've never varied from my position on this, never one day. And I may come off as anti-process. I probably am. The process very well may work. You've got some good players. Where I've always drawn the line was that you can have your process. You can tank or back into playoff or into draft picks and such, but you are not getting away with losing 199 times in 3 years without me pointing it out. It's not a virtue. It's not a talent. It's not a skill to put together lousy basketball teams, and I don't care if I'm the last one in the world to scream about it. They lost 199 times in 3 years. That's unacceptable. Let's see where they go from here. My column today is that, I acknowledge that when you're trying to compare hockey teams with baseball franchises, basketball teams, it's apples and oranges. Basketball doesn't have the pipeline, the farm system, the very depth of the farms. You don't bring guys along as slowly as you do at baseball. So it's a smaller roster, and you've got to get those guys ready in a hurry. I'm a big Okafor guy. The way Okafor can score around the basket is amazing. He's a magician. He can score from so many angles. He finishes like very few Sixers I've seen, and I've covered the Sixers for many, many years. He's a big-time finisher. So you got something to work with there. You've got the obvious great court awareness and court vision of Simmons. My problem with Simmons is, does he play hard? We don't know that. He kind of lost interest at the end of the LSU season last year, didn't even want to go to the NIT. That scares you. Won't shoot it from outside. May never be an outside shooter. Makes you wonder. I don't think Nerlens Noel is ever going to be the star-level player that they had hoped. But they've taken their shot at it. They've taken a shot at the process. And they've gotten a lot of fans brainwashed into believing that it's already completed. They won 10 games last year. Let's see, can they win more? They'll win more than that this year, but at what cost? 199 losses in 3 years. To answer your question, what is it? The juice? I don't know how you answer. It was a well-turned phrase. I remember. Is it worth the juice or?
Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it worth the squeeze?
Is the juice worth the squeeze? That's a real good question. What would be worth losing your dignity and 199 times? I'm never going to require any team to win a championship. To win a championship, you have to be really good, and you darn better be lucky. You better make the foul shot when the other team doesn't. Look at last year. You can tell me that last game of the Game 7 of the NBA Finals, that could have gone either way. That game was another 5 minutes. It was going to swing back Golden State's way. Winning a championship is an unreasonable demand. But I'll tell you what, they darn better get to a couple championship series in order, for my taste, to justify putting that level of awful basketball out there for 3 years and charging people full price to go in, by the way.
Yeah. Now, the question would be, I guess, did they assemble enough talent during this 3-year purgatory to get out of NBA purgatory, which is middle of the road? I mean, can they basically go from 0 to 60 and pass over that middle ground with what they've assembled?
Maybe not. Maybe not. What they've assembled, they've got, like I said, they've got Okafor, who's a cut above, and then they just signed a couple of mid-career journeyman professional guards that'll be a help. Bayless and Henderson will definitely upgrade them over what they had last year. Noel and Okafor can't play together, so that's going to be an issue. And we don't know whether Simmons can shoot. And that's we'll believe that one. I'll believe that when I see it. So
or are we leaving out the key? Are we leaving out the key guy though? Right? We're leaving out the key guy. Embiid.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. You talk about it. Tell me I'll believe it when I see that. Yeah, and you know, you wish the guy well. I don't have anything against him. I saw him play in college. I saw him play live in college. I saw him. He had Wiggins on the team with him. They lost to Villanova. We're talking now. All of a sudden, he's Hakeem Olajuwon. He's going to come in and win multiple titles. I'll believe it he hasn't played in he missed half of his year at Kansas with a back issue that we still haven't gotten addressed yet. Then he had the 2-foot surgery since then. Yeah, okay. We saw the guy play in college. He's a very talented guy, but he's not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he's not going to set the NBA record for scoring. Will he play at all? I don't know. See how easily I forgot him when you mentioned him? I'll believe him when they put him on the court. That's when I'll believe it. He's still standing around, not playing. Really, seriously, Mike. Okay, hey, Joel, get in a basketball uniform, will you, and play a basketball game, please.
Yeah, well, we're all waiting, I guess, and this as the Dario Saric turns too. I mean, Willie, won't he? Who knows, right? I mean, it seems like that changes by the day.
Yeah, I think he'll come. I think he'll be playing for the Sixers. Give the guy credit. At least over in Turkey, he's actually playing basketball games, so I can't accuse him of the same thing I accused Embiid of. Whether or not he can help a team at this level over here, I suppose he can. First-round draft choice, a high one, a lottery pick. Give him a chance. That might be the X factor. That might be the one I'm not counting on.
Yeah.
He could turn out to be great.
And then there's the Eagles, who typically you don't talk about rebuilds with this team. They're always in the mix, right? Now all of a sudden they trade up to the second overall pick. They draft a quarterback. Are they doing it the right way? Do we feel comfortable that this team is taking the right steps, bringing back their core players, and then going up and getting a quarterback?
My sense is, and I've written it and I'll say it again, is that I wonder about their motivation for Carson Wentz. And I say that because I am absolutely convinced, Mike, that organization, whether it starts with Jeffrey Lurie or somewhere else in the organization, has to start, it certainly ends with Jeffrey Lurie, is addicted to news-making moves. You have to go out of your way to sign Tebow and Michael Vick and the Sanchez and trade up for a number 2 pick in the draft. They are not happy unless they are commanding the bottom line on the ESPN scroll. It's like a drug to them. They had to trade up for Carson Wentz this year. For what? What are they going to do? The guy played 7 games last year in North Dakota State. I mean, now I got to throw away. I don't have it in front of me. Refresh my memory. A first, a second, a third, and a fourth. Isn't that what they gave up for this guy?
A whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, for a guy from North Dakota State that they're not going to start.
After, shelling out a lot of money for quarterbacks. But, I guess the fact that they got back to their roots, which was to keep their own players, was a good step in the right direction. Because, Kelly was just letting anybody who played for you go.
Just getting rid of Chip Kelly makes them a better football team. I'm going to have to give you that one. That whatever he was doing was not normal, and it wasn't successful. He had people brainwashed into thinking that I'm going to run practices and not practice tackling. I'm going to practice at a high tempo, set the music. I'm not going to stop practice at all to correct any mistakes. We're going to correct that later on film. I'm going to run an offense where I throw every offensive play out there within 1 second, and then have my defense so gassed that they're unable to compete. It was bizarro world football for 3 years around there, and it was amazing how he had this attitude, this preachy sort of above you approach that, yeah, this is the way it's supposed to be done. You know what? It was absurd. Now, let's see what Peterson can do, but at least Peterson's going to coach it like a real football team. That's a step in the right direction right there. And by the way, I kind of like Sam Bradford. If he can stay healthy, he can win you some games. So, yeah, I do think that the Eagles are definitely going to be improved over last year. Two different topics. The Carson Wentz move has me scratching my head, and I'm convinced that it's just another one of their initiatives to generate publicity, which they absolutely crave.
We're talking with Jack McCaffery, Delco Times. We're rating the Philly major rebuilding projects. They all seem to be rebuilding. You got a wild card in there, Jack, the Union. A lot of people, this is a Union team. All of a sudden that has turned things around and put themselves getting some more publicity.
Yeah, they're making a little run at it. And the thing you have to like is they have two All-Stars really for the first time. They've had two All-Stars in the past, but they were kind of the injury replacement kind of guy. These guys now, Rosenberry and Blake, are All-Stars on merit. One's 25, one's 22. The problem with that myself and we all stumble into when you start to talk about rebuilding a soccer franchise, at least in North America, is that if these guys really are good enough, they're going to have opportunities elsewhere, overseas and such. Specifically Blake, he's played enough for Jamaica that he'll have opportunity. He'll have his passport will be sufficiently stamped enough that he'll be able to move internationally at a minute's notice if he has to. So when you talk about the Union, I had a little fun with it because, again, two All-Stars, 25 or less. Rosenberry, 22 years old, was the number 3 overall pick in the draft. And the one thing I mentioned is that he had the number 3. The Union had the number 3 overall pick in the draft, and the guy's already an All-Star. I don't think you're going to get that same instant reaction from Moniak or Simmons or Wentz. I don't know that they're all going to. I don't think any of them will be an All-Star as a rookie. But then again, I acknowledge we're going apples and oranges here. It's tough to compare sports.
So
but for the enjoyment of just a little fun read, yeah, the Union have two young All-Stars, and it makes you step up and take a little notice. And they're winning games. That win that they had over DC United on Saturday night was as well as I've ever seen them play.
Jack McCaffrey's with us, columnist, Delco Times. So, Jack, who is doing it the best? Who should we hitch our wagon to that that will get us a winning season the fastest?
I'll stick to what I said in my column today, the Phillies. And, again, you have a farm system to build with, and you have a lot of different ways to go. It's a non-salary capped situation, so if John Middleton, and he has promised to do so, when it gets close, he's going to reach into his $3 billion bucket of cash. And I said billion, right? $3 billion bucket of cash he's going to spend. So, yeah, they've made some nice trades. They've offloaded some pieces. They've brought back multiple good, young, talented, fascinating, fun-to-watch players. They've rebuilt their farm system, and they have an owner that's willing to spend. So that's the one that you should keep an eye on the most. The second to that, very close second, is the Flyers because Ron Hextall is doing it the right way, and he's also managed to get the Flyers into the playoffs while he did it. So 1 and 1A, Flyers, Sixers, or Phillies, Flyers. Sixers, again, they're absolutely going to be improved. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think I'm going to enjoy watching Ben Simmons play.
I think a lot of people might. Jack McCaffrey, Delaware County Daily Times. Read that column. It's a fun piece here at the All-Star break. And take a look at all 4 and 5, really, Philly teams with the Union's progress in there as well. Good stuff, Jack. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me.